Dear colleague, please take your seat. Yes. Dear colleague, I'd like to make an announcement before starting our plenary session. I understand that yesterday there was some misunderstanding regarding the composition of the drafting group on draft decision 7B 100 on Panama. Allow me to remind you that this group has been set up with the aim to help in the drafting of a decision that would be acceptable to everyone in a spirit of consensus and cooperation. I would like to recall, as I did this morning in the Bureau meeting, that this drafting group is composed of committee members that may wish to attend. Other state parties can attend the drafting group as observer. We now proceed with our agenda item 8A, devoted to the tentative list and to the draft decision 37-8A. I invite Mr. Balsamo from the World Heritage Center to briefly present the main issue of document WHC 13/37.com/8A. Mr. Balsamo, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Document 37-8A presents the tentative list of all state parties submitted in conformity with the operational guidelines as of 15 April 2013. In particular, Annex 3 presents a list of all the properties submitted on tentative list received from state parties in alphabetical order. Annex 2 of the document 8A presents all the new tentative lists or additions to tentative lists which have been submitted by state parties since the last session of the World Heritage Committee. As of 15 April 2013, of the 180 state parties which have ratified the Convention, 172, which is the 90% of the state parties, had submitted tentative lists in accordance with the requirement specified in the operational guidelines, and 18 state parties had not submitted any tentative list. All the nominations submitted for examination in 2013 are included on the tentative list of the state parties concerned. Since the preparation of document 8A for the 36th session of the committee in 2012, 33 state parties have submitted new tentative lists or modified their existing lists, and the number of new properties added to existing tentative list is 80, which brings now the total of sites currently on the tentative list to 1,587. Decision 37-8A is on page 2 of the English version and page 3 of the French version of the document. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Balsamo, for your explanation. Now I would like to invite state party to express their comment concerning this document and to adopt the draft decision 37-8A. Please, I open for comment. I see none. I declare draft decision 37,8A adopted and item 8A closed. I propose now to continue the examination of item 8B, nomination to the World Heritage List. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for us to consider the nomination of property to the World Heritage List. I would like to recall that the relevant working document concerning nomination are 8B, 8B.ADD, and 8B.ADD2. The advisory body evaluation can be found in the information document ICOMOS INF.8B1, INF.8B1.ADD, and IUCN INF.8B2, INF.8B2.ADD. Let me recall that document INF 8B3 presents the list of all the nominations received by 1st February 2013, with the indication of those which were deemed as complete. These nominations are not going to be discussed during our debate here, as they are foreseen to be examined at our next committee session in 2014. Document INF.8B4 presents factual errors identified by state parties in the advisory body evaluation in accordance with paragraph 150 of the operational guideline. I have carefully reviewed all letters received and together with the advisory body and the Secretariat, retain only those letters or those parts of it dealing with factual error. These factual errors were distributed to you in the form of this information document in the 2 working languages. They will be announced by the Secretariat before the presentation of the concerned nomination and answered by the relevant advisory body after the presentation. I now invite the Secretariat to add some explication on and to read out the list of factual errors received. Mr. Balsamo, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. The following factual errors letter are those included in document of information 8B4. Canada, Pimachuwing Ake. Canada, Reed Bay Basque Whaling Station. Democratic People's Republic of Korea, Historic Monuments and Sites in Kaesong. Germany, Bergpark Wilhelmshöhe. India, Hill Forts of Rajasthan. Iran, Cultural Landscape of Maiman. Iran, Golestan Pass. Japan, Fujisan. Poland, Bielitska and Bochnia Royal Salt Mines. Portugal, University of Coimbra, Alta and Sofia. Russia Federation, Bulgar Historical and Archaeological Complex. And one for the minimum boundary modification of Australia, the Tasmanian Wilderness. Before the presentation of the concerned nominations by the advisory bodies, the Secretariat will announce the related factual error letter, and at the end of the presentation, the advisory bodies will address it. I wish to remind the committee that the full version of all these letters and other ones which have not been deemed as containing factual errors, as well as a document which include the advisory body comments on all the letters, have been uploaded on our web page along with the PDF version of the nomination to be examined by the committee at this session. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Malfamu. Are there any objection? No objection. Thank you for your question. Let's now move to the first set of draft decision concerning this item, which are the proposed changes to name of property inscribed on the World Heritage List. I invite Alessandro Balsamo to present it. Item, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For this session of the committee, we received 7 requests for changes to names of properties already inscribed on the World Heritage List. And if there are no objections, in order to save time, I will present them all together, and the committee will deal with the adoption of the related draft decision at the end. The first request comes from Cuba and deal with Old Havana and its fortification, inscribed on the World Heritage List in 1982. In order to make the English name correspond to the French name, the committee is asked to approve a change to the English name, which becomes Old Havana and its fortification system. The second request is from the Irish authorities about archaeological ensemble of the Band of the Boyne, inscribed on the World Heritage List in 1993. The committee is asked to approve the proposed name change, which becomes, and I excuse my pronunciation, Brunabone, Archaeological Ensemble of the Band of the Boyne in English, and Brunabone, Ensemble archéologique de la Vallée de la Boyne in French. The third request for name change comes from the Polish authorities and deals with the wooden churches of southern Little Poland, inscribed on the World Heritage List in 2003. And the committee is asked to approve the proposed name change, which becomes Wooden Churches of Southern Malopolska in English, and Église en bois du sud de Malopolska in French. The fourth request for name change is also from Poland and deals with Krakow's Historic Center, inscribed in 1978. The committee is asked to approve the proposed name change, which becomes Historic Center of Krakow in English and Centre Historique de Krakow in French. The fifth request for name change from South Africa and concern the fossil hominid sites of Sterkfontein, Zwartkant, Kromdai, and Environs, inscribed on the World Heritage List in 1999. And the committee is asked to approve the proposed name change, which becomes Fossil Hominid Sites of South Africa in English and Sites des Hominides Fossiles d'Afrique du Sud in French. The sixth request for name change comes from Switzerland and concerns the convent of St. Gall, inscribed in 1983. The committee is asked to approve the proposed name change, which becomes Abbey of St. Gall in English and Abbey de St. Gall in French. And the seventh and last request for name change we are treating at this session comes from United Kingdom and deals with Westminster Palace, Westminster Abbey, and St. Margaret Church, inscribed on the World Heritage List in 1987. The committee is asked to approve the proposed name change, which becomes Palace of Westminster and Westminster Abbey, including St. Margaret Church in English, and Palais de Westminster et l'Abbé de Westminster, incluant l'église Sainte-Marguerite in French. The related draft decision 37-8B 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 are on page 1 and 2 of both the English and French version of document 8B. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Matsumo. If any objection, I see none. So I declare the draft decision 37,8b, point 1, point 2, point 3, point 4, point 5, point 6, and 7 adopted. Our next point on this agenda, item 8b, deal with withdrawal of nomination to be examined by this session of the committee. I invite Mr. Alessandro Balsamo to read out the list of the nomination withdrawn at the request of the concerned state party. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A total of 6 nominations were withdrawn prior to this committee session and after the publication of document 8b. Croatia, sacral complex of the remains of the Roman Forum in Zadar. Japan, Kamakura, home of the samurai. Netherlands, Taylor's Harlem. Russian Federation, Sviazk, historical, architectural, natural and landscape complex. Turkey, historic city of Alanya, and Vietnam, Cat Tien National Park. Following these 6 withdrawals, the committee will have to examine 30 nominations, and among them there are 8 for natural sites, 3 for mixed sites, and 19 for cultural sites. And let me take this opportunity to remind you that we installed the PDF version of all the nominations to examine at this session, which are on 3 computers installed out of this room in front of the elevators on your right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Balsamo. Are there any comments? I see none. As we begin with the examination or nomination, I would like to take this opportunity to recall 2 essential procedures concerning nomination to be examined. Firstly, as you may recall, the committee is requested to examine the recommendation and draft decision presented in the relevant document, and in accordance with paragraph 153 of the operational guideline, take its decision following 4 category inscription. Decision not to inscribe, referral and deferral. The committee may decide to inscribe a property on the World Heritage List, paragraph 154 of the operational guideline. The committee may decide that the property should not be inscribed on the World Heritage List, paragraph 188 of the operational guideline. The committee may decide to refer back a nomination to the state party for additional information, paragraph 159 of the operational guideline. The committee may decide to defer a nomination for more in-depth assessment or study or a substantial revision by the state party, paragraph 160 of the operational guideline. In particular, nomination which the committee decide to refer back to the state party for additional information may be resubmitted to the following committee session for examination. For a refer nomination, there is no new nomination file be prepared, and there is no evaluation mission of the relevant advisory body foreseen to the property. If the committee decides to defer a nomination, it means that an in-depth assessment or study or substantial revision of the nomination filed by the state party is needed. Therefore, a new nomination should be submitted by 1st February, which will be re-evaluated by the relevant advisory body during the full year and a half evaluation cycle according to the procedure and timetable outlined in the paragraph 168 of the operational guideline. Secondly, on the specific issue of submission of additional information on nomination, I would like to recall that each of paragraph 148 as well as the nomination timetable of paragraph 168 of the operational guideline, which establish the deadline for the submission of additional information on nomination, and say the evaluation and presentation of the advisory body should not take into account or include any information submitted by the state party after 28 February in the year in which the nomination is considered. We can now proceed with the examination of nomination. We will begin with the natural nomination, followed by mixed and then cultural nomination. As in the past, for ease of reference, the page number in the advisory body evaluation document are also shown in the PowerPoint presentation. I am going to call on IUCN and ECOMOS to be concise in their presentation, as you will be allocated only 5 to 8 minutes to present each nomination depending on its category. That means 8 minutes for mixed size nomination, 7 minutes for large serial nomination. Thank you in advance for your cooperation. Before we start the presentation concerning nomination to be examined, I give the floor to IUCN for a brief presentation of the evaluation process. Please, IUCN, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, and good morning to the committee. In a moment, Mr. Peter Shady will join me on the podium for the presentation of nominations, but before that, as announced, I'd like to open with a short explanation of our work on the World Heritage evaluations this year. Next slide, please. I can confirm firstly that IUCN has considered all of the nominations we are asked to evaluate through the required processes, considering the need to address the questions of the World Heritage criteria, as well as the requirements for integrity and also for protection and management. And IUCN's report covers all of those aspects that are required to put in place to meet the requirements of outstanding universal value for inscription on the World Heritage List. Next slide, please. Also a familiar slide to the committee, but IUCN would like to recall the expectation in paragraph 52 of the operational guidelines that the Convention is not intended to ensure the protection of all properties of great interest, importance or value, but of a select list of the most outstanding from a global viewpoint. And so in assessing outstanding universal value, we assess sites in relation to other global systems of protection, also the importance and growing importance of regional networks to recognise heritage, as well as importance at national level. Next slide, please. IUCN's principles for the evaluation are shown on this slide, and I will not attempt to read those out, but please see them if you wish. But I would emphasise, firstly, the clear role that World Heritage Sites play as flagships for global conservation, and the need to set the highest standards for their listing and for their conservation. We also note that we access the expertise of other organisations, notably on the geological sciences from the International Union of Geological Sciences, and also from the International Association of Geomorphologists, and we would like to warmly thank them for their partnership and support, both to IUCN but more to World Heritage as a whole. If I'm just passing thanks, I would also wish at this moment to thank all those people in the IUCN World Heritage Programme who put so much effort into the work to support the committee, but particularly for the evaluations, to acknowledge the support that we received from the World Commission on Protected Areas of IUCN, the Species Survival Commission of IUCN, who provide an enormous amount of volunteered expertise without which this committee could not receive the advice that we give it. Next slide, please. I believe the committee is familiar with the IUCN evaluation process, which leads to a recommendation of the IUCN World Heritage Panel, so I will not take the time to re-explain the details on this slide. But I would like to note that following discussions at the committee last year, IUCN has put online our panel membership, the terms of reference for our panel, the format for the reports which evaluators make from the field, and the format of input which we request reviewers to provide. So all of the documentation and the panel process that we have documented is in the public domain and available now. Next slide, please. This slide, which was also shown to the committee last year, emphasises how we've tried to attempt to increase to the greatest extent possible dialogue with states parties during the evaluation process. Largely, further scope for dialogue needs a reflection on other processes, including the upstream process that will be discussed under item 9. But I would like to note for this year that we did introduce an additional proactive attempt at dialogue with states parties at the immediate moment that the evaluation reports were released to the committee and to the public 6 weeks before the committee. And I'd like to thank the many state parties that took advantage of that invitation to be able to speak with us before the committee meeting. Next slide, please. In looking forward, I would like to take this opportunity to note, firstly, that in support of future nominations, IUCN has launched at this committee several new thematic studies. One is a thematic study and a major study on terrestrial biodiversity and the World Heritage List, which has been supported by Germany. And one of the lead authors of that study, Mr. Ishwan Shi, is with me here on the podium. We've also launched, with the support of Australia and with input from ICOMOS, a new analysis on criterion 7, the aesthetic criterion. We've also compiled an analysis of the overlap between World Heritage cultural landscapes and protected areas, and we'd like to acknowledge the welcome printing of the resource manual on managing natural world heritage, which is the key source for management of natural world heritage sites, that's now been printed in English and French, and that was mentioned in an earlier item. Next slide, please. In terms of providing future support, I'd like to note the importance we're attaching to extending our regional network of support to World Heritage. One of the living and breathing regional advisors that we now have within IUCN on World Heritage in the Arab states, Haifa Abdul Halim, is here on the podium, but we have now got, in essence, complete regional coverage in our offices of advisors on World Heritage. Some are able to put a lot of time into that work, others have very limited time to put into that work, but we do have somebody available in every region. In that context, I'd like to acknowledge many donors and partners that are assisting us, and including perhaps in particular to mention the cooperation that Haifa is undertaking with the Category 2 Centre in Bahrain, which is turning into a very practically focused programme of work in the region. Next slide, please. We also have at this committee the outcomes of a major workshop, again with the support of Germany and the German Nature Conservation Agency, BFN, which was held earlier this year to reflect on how we could improve and make more effective the IUCN World Heritage Programme. And as I noted in an earlier intervention, we also have the management response that's been issued to the Director General of UNESCO's meeting that was held last October from IUCN that is now available on our website. We're also just concluding a periodic review of the IUCN programme, which follows up the last review undertaken by Professor Christina Cameron, and the results of that review and our management response to it will also be transparently available to all of you, and I'd like to thank many of the people that are in this room that have provided input to that review process. Next slide, please. I'd like to note that following the review of our evaluation process, engagement with communities and Indigenous peoples that was reported to the committee last year, we have introduced some additional consultation procedures within the evaluation process and also outreach process for review, including explicit mention of communities in all of the evaluation reports before you. And I'd like to thank the many organisations focused on communities and Indigenous peoples that are starting to provide direct input to our work. And I'd also like to note the issue of the importance to improve the integration of considering cultural and natural heritage, where we believe there is a need for some new modalities of coordination between IUCN and ICOMOS, which may get discussed, if you so wish, in the mixed site evaluations this year. And we would propose to bring back further reflections to this committee next year, having discussed that further with ICOMOS. Next slide, please. And lastly, before I turn to the nominations, may I just take the opportunity that a picture of greatly increased activity within IUCN on World Heritage will be featured in a number of key events in IUCN's calendar during 2013 and also 2014. Please note the events on this slide if you wish and are interested to engage in the World Wilderness Congress, the first Asia Parks Congress, the Impact event, which is the major 3-yearly global event on marine protected areas, and next and final slide, please, the opportunity which these reflections will lead into to a once-in-a-decade event of the World Parks Congress that IUCN is coordinating in partnership with Australia and will be held in November 2014. This slide says 2013, which is a mistake, November 2014 in Sydney, Australia. On the podium here with me is Mr. Cyril Kormos, who's the Vice Chair for World Heritage of WCPA, and Mr. Masahito Yoshida, who is involved in the coordination of the Asia Parks Congress, and please engage with them if you wish. I'd like to note the advisory bodies are proposing a side event in our space on the 23rd of June at 1 o'clock to allow for a space for dialogue on questions on our work in support of the convention, and that will take place in room 4 on the 4th floor. But if there are any points from the committee at this moment, Mr. Chair, we'll be happy to take them, or otherwise we may pass to begin to present the nominations. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, if any comment, please. So no comment. We will now start with the first nomination. With natural properties, A1 Africa, A11 new nomination, Namib Sansi, Namibia. Draft decision 37 come with 8B.8. I now invite IUCN to present the nomination of the Namib Sansi, Namibia. IUCN, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. IUCN's evaluation of this property is on page 15 of both the English and French versions of the IUCN evaluation report documented for 8B2. Next slide, please. The Namib Sand Sea lies at the heart of the Namib, a coastal fog desert on Africa's South Atlantic coast in Namibia. This very large property encompasses an area of over 3 million hectares, with almost 900,000 hectares designated as a buffer zone. And both the nominated property and the buffer zone lie within the even larger Namib-Naukluft National Park. Next slide, please. The nominated property represents the unique coastal desert that includes extensive dune fields influenced by fog. The property is primarily composed of two dune systems, an ancient system overlain by a younger active one, and the dune fields make up over 80% of the area, and the sand sea includes most of the known types of dunes, together with the associated landforms formed through aeolian depositional processes. Next slide, please. The property is nominated under all four natural criteria. It's a place of outstanding natural beauty where atmospheric conditions provide exceptional visibility of landscape features by day and the dazzling southern hemisphere sky at night. The age, extent and height of the dunes are outstanding, and the property also exhibits a range of features that give it exceptional aesthetic qualities of outstanding natural beauty. Next slide, please. The Namib Sand Sea represents an exceptional example of ongoing geological processes, including the formation of the world's only extensive dune system in a coastal fog desert formed through transport of material over thousands of kilometres by river, ocean, current and wind. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, stay with this slide. The property is an exceptional example of ongoing ecological processes where plant and animal communities are continuously adapting to life in a hyper-arid environment in which fog is harvested in extraordinary ways to provide their primary source of water, and the property is also an outstanding importance for the in-situ conservation of an unusual array of endemic species which have evolved in response to this particular set of environmental conditions. Next slide, please. The nominated property is state-owned and managed. Protection of the area dates back over a century, and legal protection involved over 7 different stages of development, started as early as 1907. And the property benefits from an exceptional research and management facility in the form of the Desert Research Station at Gobabeb. Next slide, please. The draft management plan includes a provisional zoning plan. IUCN recognises that considerable efforts have already been invested in management planning. Some further work is needed to complete and fully integrate 2 overlapping plans and to identify the realistic priorities for action within an ambitious programme of work. There are some notable threats, particularly the need to manage tourism, and we would like to note the important decision the state party has taken to extinguish mining licence within the property to enable the nomination to proceed. There's evident community engagement, and first-hand discussions were held with the Indigenous peoples involved in this area to confirm their support for the nomination. Next slide, please. IUCN would also like to note the good example this site provides in the programme of work on the upstream process. It is, I think, the first site in that process that comes forward with a positive recommendation for inscription. And in particular, we would want to note the successful engagement of the state party in the capacity building work on African nominations that's been supported by the African World Heritage Fund, in which IUCN, the other advisory bodies and the World Heritage Centres have all engaged. And in turn, this has supported the recognition of an area which has long been identified as a clear gap on the World Heritage List. Next slide, please. IUCN therefore considers that the nominated property meets all 4 natural criteria, as well as the integrity and management requirements for inscription on the World Heritage List, and we recommend unequivocally the property be inscribed on the list. And I'd like to note that if the committee is so minded to accept this advice, this will be the first natural site inscribed on all 4 natural criteria on the World Heritage List since 2003, and one of only around 20 such inscriptions, and we believe that is a status that is fully warranted. Chair, the draft decision is set out in page 5 of both the English and French versions of Working Document 8B. Thank you, Chair.
I thank the IUCN for the presentation. Now, are there any comments, please? Estonia, you have the floor.
Thank you for the floor. Estonia would like to express its delight for this really spectacular natural site. As known, deserts are currently poorly represented on the World Heritage List, but also among world's deserts. This, in general, this one is very special. We want to commend the State Party for this nomination and propose further extensions to it. But also we are impressed by the fact that Nabib Sansi is the first pilot project of the upstream process, which has been recommended for the inscription. It really shows the importance of assistance and advice in the preparation of nominations, but also testifies the strong commitment of the State Party throughout the process. Thank you.
I give the floor to Malaysia.
Thank you, Chair. Like Estonia, Malaysia would like to congratulate for the unique nomination that has fulfilled all the 4 criteria and has shown sensitivity to the site through its protection measures. Malaysia appreciates that the State Party has taken steps to protect the flora and fauna through studies on the invasive species in particular, and a comprehensive management plan has been put in place. The support from the local communities is very important, as we would like to congratulate the State Party for the support it has received from all the stakeholders in Namibia. Thank you, sir.
I invite Russia to take the floor, please.
Спасибо большое. Российская Федерация поздравляет Намибию с вписанием в список всемирного наследия столь замечательного объекта. Мы от всей души поздравляем вам и желаем, чтобы теперь осталось самое малое – это правильно содержать этот объект и заниматься его консервацией. Спасибо.
I now give the floor to Germany, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I would like to join the previous speakers in congratulating Namibia for this convincing nomination of the first natural site of the country. We fully support. Thank you.
La Suisse, vous avez la parole.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Nous voudrions aussi congratuler l'État parti pour cette nomination réussie et surtout pour l'exemple qu'il a donné dans ce cadre du processus en amont en collaboration avec le Fonds du patrimoine mondial pour le patrimoine mondial africain et son engagement fort dans un processus en amont technique et réussi. Merci.
Sénégal, vous avez la parole.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je suis naturellement très heureux que nous commencions notre session de nomination par un site africain. Si on était en rugby, on aurait dit que la Namibie a fait le grand chelem. C'est donc une très grande satisfaction pour nous. Cela montre qu'il y a de l'expertise sur le continent, qu'il y a de la détermination. Et je pense que c'est un exemple que nous allons essayer de dupliquer pour que les autres pays qui ont des dossiers de nomination soient un peu à l'école de la Namibie et fassent les efforts nécessaires pour qu'on arrive avec des dossiers totalement blindés. Je félicite nos amis de la Namibie.
Merci, le Sénégal. Je donne la parole à l'Afrique du Sud.
Thank you, Chair. We wish to join in congratulating Namibia for having done an impeccable job in listing, whilst it's a new site, but have 4 criteria, which is a rarity in most nominations. The nomination of the site will contribute towards a global strategy for a representative a balanced and credible world heritage in our region. Thank you.
Here you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We would like to compliment the State Party of Namibia for very successfully bringing forward the nomination. The deserts are a very important gap on the World Heritage List, and this nomination, the successful inscription, will serve to plug this gap. We would also like to compliment the IUCN for very successfully carrying forward the upstreaming process, and as we understand, this is the first successful example of doing that, and we wish that such upstreaming processes make use of other countries in the convention. Thank you.
HOP, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Well, Ethiopia would like to congratulate and appreciates all the comprehensive and coordinated efforts made by the State Party of Namibia and all the advisories, the IUCN, to bring such exceptional property to the World Heritage List as its first natural site of the country. Thank you.
Give the floor to Qatar.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. نود بدورنا أن نهنئ ناميبيا على هذا الملف المتكامل الذي سمح بالتوصية لتسجيل هذا الموقع الطبيعي الجميل، والملف قد غطى المعايير الأربعة المطلوبة للتسجيل، فنهنئهم على هذا الملف الجيد. شكرا.
Je donne la parole à la Serbie.
Thank you, Chair. We would also like to support and congratulate Namibia for this great nomination, but also we would like to mention that upstream process, like it was said before, it's very useful, and also we are pleased to see that there are good nominations from all the continents this year, so it shows that upstreaming process and role of advisory body, IUCN in this case, is very useful. Thank you.
Je donne la parole à la France, s'il vous plaît.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Nous voudrions également nous joindre à ces félicitations et vraiment féliciter très sincèrement la Namibie qui satisfait par ce dossier aux 4 critères. Et nous saisissons cette occasion pour remercier également l'UICN pour son remarquable travail. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Mali, vous avez la parole.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Monsieur le Président, la délégation malienne joint sa voix à celle des précédentes pour féliciter l'État-partie de Namibie pour la qualité de ce dossier et surtout pour le respect du processus en amont. C'est quand même une toute première. Par ailleurs, nous saisissons également l'opportunité pour adresser toutes nos félicitations à l'IUCN pour la qualité de l'évaluation du dossier. Merci.
Yes. Let me congratulate. No more comment? No more comment? Colombia. Colombia.
Gracias, señor presidente, por otorgarnos el uso de la palabra. Nosotros también queremos sumarnos a las felicitaciones que se le han dado al Estado parte de Namibia. Nos parece supremamente importante el hecho de que se estén trabajando nominaciones de bienes que están subrepresentados, como en este caso de estos hermosos desiertos. Asimismo, reconocemos un esfuerzo enorme del Estado parte para limitar las licencias de minería, de extracción minera, que en un país en vías de desarrollo es supremamente difícil, pero muy, muy valioso lo que está haciendo el Estado de Namibia. Asimismo, nos parece bastante importante que se estén utilizando los 4 criterios. Y por último, quisiéramos también exaltar la muy positiva labor que ha hecho la IUCN de un trabajo coordinado y exitoso con el Estado parte. Muchas gracias.
Any more comment, please? If there are no comment, no objection, I now declare the decision 37,8b.8 adopted. Let me congratulate Namibia on behalf of the entire committee for the inception of their highly qualified property in Namibia. You have the floor for a brief 2-minute statement. Yeah, Namibia, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, my delegation and I are filled with joy and pride to receive this excellent news today in this wonderful and welcoming city of the Kingdom of Cambodia. In a moment, our countrymen and women back home will join us in this celebratory mood. The nomination of the NAMIBC was a collective effort, and what we are witnessing and celebrating today is a collective achievement. In preparing this nomination, we did not only deploy enormous national resources, but we also received valuable support from friends and social partners. In particular, we thank the German Heritage Foundation and the German Commission for UNESCO for having provided us with both technical and financial support to initiate the nomination. The NAMIBC was selected as a pilot nomination of the upstream process introduced and sanctioned by this World Heritage Committee. We trust that the World Heritage Center and advisory bodies benefited as much as Namibia from this experience of testing and implementing appropriate consultative mechanism in the preparation of dossiers. Naturally, the African World Heritage Fund continued to strengthen our national capacity and thereby enabled us to speed up the process. This is the second site of Namibia to be inscribed on the World Heritage List, and we will continue to count on the support of the committee and all of our partners for future nominations. On behalf of the government and the people of Namibia, in particular the local community in the surrounding area of the property, I wish to express our profound gratitude to the international community for its solidarity and cooperation on this occasion. Allow me now, Mr. Chairman, to give the floor to my chief to greet and thank the committee in a true Namibian fashion.
Kai kankans kawai sa ainuat ni wan amsa ai khanam nus tite kan ra Namibia ni kai tuis koinge ne di ikain asa neng hub ai ting house na khoka he chikhana he chikhari khonwa bas aroma kai kankans. Danke.
I express my deep thanks to Excellency the Minister of Culture of Namibia. Now we came to A.1.2, extension of property already inscribed on the World Heritage List. Lawa Wildlife Conservancy and Nagar Nadara Forest Reserve, Kenya, extension of Mau Kenya National Park Natural Forest. Draft decision 37,8b.9. I now invite IUCN to present the extension of Mau Kenya National Park / Natural Forest to include Lawa Wildlife Conservancy and Nagar Nadara Forest Reserve, Kenya. IUCN, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. IUCN's evaluation of the Mount Kenya Lua Wildlife Conservancy is on page 3 of both the English and French versions of the IUCN evaluation report. Next slide, please. The proposed extension consists of Lua Wildlife Conservancy and Ngare Forest Reserve, an area of 19,834 hectares located in northern Kenya. The nominated property is surrounded by a complex of 9 protected lands that form a buffer zone of over 69,000 hectares. The proposed extension is connected to the Mount Kenya National Park Natural Forest World Heritage Site via a narrow elephant corridor of just under 10 kilometres, which traverses farming land and is located in the buffer zone. Next slide, please. The property is nominated under 2 natural criteria, 7 and 9. In relation to criterion 7, the outstanding natural beauty derives from the diversity of landscapes and the visual contrast between Mount Kenya, looming above the Kenyan highlands, and the flat, arid grasslands and sparse wooded plains of the Lua Wildlife Conservancy and Forest Reserve. The proposed extension secures outstanding middle and long-distance viewscapes of Mount Kenya itself. Next slide. In relation to criterion 9, the extension adds an additional set of ecosystem processes and species diversity that are currently not part of the Mount Kenya World Heritage Site by incorporating lower-lying foothills and arid habitats of high biological richness and diversity. The extension adds ecotones from high-altitude afrotropical montane ecosystems to semi-arid East African grasslands and savanna, and so provides for a more ecologically intact World Heritage Site. Next slide. The property also lies within the traditional migration route of the African elephant population of the Mount Kenya Somali Masai ecosystem and has always been the traditional dry season feeding area for elephants. A 9.8 kilometre long elephant corridor was constructed to link Mount Kenya through the Forest Reserve and into the Lua Wildlife Conservancy. This corridor has been in operation since December 2010 and follows a natural drainage valley which provides food and cover for the animals. The corridor has an electrified fence and passes under the A2 road. Monitoring has confirmed that the corridor has proved highly successful, with more than 400 elephant movements recorded as having used the underpass since January 2011. These animals have re-established their original movements that now extend northwards over some 250 kilometres from Mount Kenya to Samburu National Park and the Matthews Range. IUCN would like to highlight the critical importance of this corridor to connect the 2 components of the serial extension. The property is well protected. Lua Wildlife Conservancy is a private protected area managed for the conservation of biological diversity and thus has met the national legal requirements for designation as a conservancy. Kenyan government policy promotes conservancies as a strategy to improve biodiversity conservation. Lua Wildlife Conservancy is managed by a board of trustees, is staffed by over 300. Both staff and visitors are bound by a code of conduct that governs activities. Whilst the property is subject to a range of threats common to the Mount Kenya World Heritage Site, management programs are in place to address these, and they are not considered to pose a serious threat to the property's values. Both the Lua Wildlife Conservancy and Ngare Forest Reserve have individual management plans specific to their areas of jurisdiction, although they are based on different timeframes. 3 institutions, Kenya Wildlife Service, Kenya Forest Service, and the Lua Conservancy Board of Trustees, will require close coordination to manage the serial property. All are signatories to the Mount Kenya Ecosystem Management Plan, which provides an overarching management planning framework. So in summary, Mr Chair, IUCN considers the property meets the relevant natural criteria, integrity protection and management requirements when considered as an extension to the Mount Kenya site. IUCN therefore recommends that the World Heritage Committee approves the extension under natural criteria 7 and 9, and the decision is set out on page 6 of the English and page 7 of the French versions of the working document 8B. Thank you, Mr Chair.
Thank you, IUCN. If there are any comment, please. je donne la parole au Japon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Japan would like to support the extension of Mount Kenya to include this property. But please allow me to make one question to the State Party regarding the elephant corridor. The corridor is definitely a very important place for this property. And we would like to ask the reason why it's not included in the nominated property and the prospect for future inclusion. Thank you.
The floor to Germany.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to congratulate Kenya for this extension, which contributes to enhancing ecological connectivity and with this integrity of the property. This nomination shows that a serial approach can be used to strengthen the ecosystem protection. And the fact that a private protected area is included in the serial property is a good example of the variety of governance models for World Heritage sites. And I wish that this could be explored in further nominations from whatever region. Thank you.
Vous avez la parole.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je me réjouis déjà de cette perspective. Nous sommes habitués, et le Kenya est un très bon élève du patrimoine et un bon leader pour le groupe Afrique. Nous ne sommes pas trop surpris de cette proposition, mais je me réjouis surtout du fait qu'ils aient établi avec beaucoup d'intelligence un continuum entre deux espaces pour permettre à cette grosse faune de ne pas se retrouver devant des barrières infranchissables et de pouvoir ainsi continuer ces migrations séculaires indispensables au maintien de l'espèce. Je pense que le Kenya, de toute façon, le dira mieux que moi et il serait utile de donner la parole à l'État partie.
Bon, je donne la parole à Éthiopie avant d'inviter l'État parti.
Thank you, Chair. We would like to join the very good, intelligent effort made by Kenya and would like to congratulate the State Party of Kenya. I share all the explanation made by my colleague from Senegal. They had been managing Mount Kenya intelligently, and now they worked hard for this serial extension, which will add on values on its integrity. So we would like to congratulate the State Party of Kenya, and we support the extension. Thank you.
Oui, il y a la question tournée envers l'État parti, donc j'invite l'État parti de prendre parole. Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. The question from Japan is very relevant, and they have the right as committee members to ask it because Kenya government and all the stakeholders involved also recognize the need in future. Maybe next year we'll come and ask for that to be included. So we agree with their question. What they want to be done is what the government wants to do plus the stakeholders. But for this time, we only wanted to do this extension and we move slowly, but to assure them the animals are very well protected by all the stakeholders around the mountain. Thank you.
If there are no more comment or objection, I now declare decision 37. Algérie, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Donc, je tiens à nous féliciter donc, pour cet acquis pour le le patrimoine mondial et nous félicitons l'État partie donc, pour cette proposition d'extension et nous félicitons aussi l'IUCN pour le bon rapport qu'ils ont élaboré. Donc nous soutenons et appuyons fortement donc, cette proposition d'extension pour le Kenya. Merci.
No more comment. L'Afrique du Sud, vous avez la parole.
Thank you, Chair. I'm delighted once more to congratulate Kenya for further improving the management of the magnificent and iconic Mount Kenya. It is the second highest mountain in Africa, so we are very proud for this. And the existing legislative framework will ensure effective management of this globally important heritage. Congratulations, Kenya.
If there are no more comments or objection,
Serbia.
Serbie, vous avez la parole.
Serbia would also like to congratulate Kenya and to support extension of the borders. Thank you.
More comment, please. No more. No more comment or objection. Here.
Yes.
I now declare the decision 37,8b.9 adopted. So let me congratulate Kenya on behalf of the entire committee for the inscription of this property. Kenya, you have the floor for a brief 2-minute statement. Thank you. Kenya, you have the floor.
Mr. President, what a joy to receive this wonderful news in such a beautiful country. We thank you and your government for hosting this meeting. We also, Kenya government, thank the World Heritage Center and IUCN. For us, Kenya, we know the contribution, the advice, and all the technical advice you gave us. This is a mountain that was actually inscribed in 1997, and the government recognizes that there are people around the mountain who take it to be a holy ground. There are others who want to make sure the animals are not touched. It's one of the most impressive landscapes in East Africa, if not the most beautiful one. It is the second highest peak in Africa, and I want also to thank the Lewa Wildlife Conservancy and all the stakeholders around the mountain who have agreed to work as a team and to preserve this famous mountain in Kenya and all its surroundings. Thank you very much for what you've done, all the committee members. God bless each one of you. Thank you.
So I express my thanks to the distinguished representative from Kenya. Now we came to A.2, Asia Pacific. A.2.1 New nomination. Xinjiang, Tianshan, China. Draft decision 37.8b.10. I now invite IUCN to present the nomination of the Xinjiang, Tianshan, China. But before I give the floor to the Secretariat, Mr. Balsamo, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. It's just to announce that we received a factual error letter on this nomination, which is online but not in document 8B4. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Balsamo. IUCN, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. IUCN's evaluation of Xinjiang Tianshan is on page 27 of both the English and French versions of the IUCN evaluation report. Next slide, please. Xinjiang Tianshan is nominated as a serial site comprising 4 components of Tomur, Kalojun, Kwerdening, Ba'in Buluke, and the Bogda Mountain System, which together represent the spectrum of landscape diversity within the much larger Tianshan mountain system. And this nominated property in total comprises a little over 600,000 hectares, with buffer zones approaching 500,000 hectares. Next slide, please. The property nominated under criteria 7 and 9 contains a scenically beautiful series of areas including spectacular snow-capped mountains, glacier-capped peaks, undisturbed forests and meadows, clear rivers and lakes and red-bed canyons, reinforced by the combination and contrast of these mountainous elements with the vast Central Asian deserts and between the dry southern slopes and the much wetter slopes of the system. Next slide, please. The nominated property extends into the Taklimakan Desert, which is notable as one of the world's largest and highest deserts, and displays large arrays of dune forms, large bounding alluvial fans, pluvial lakes, and its ability to produce large numbers of dust storms. And this is, like the Namib that we've discussed already, a desert noted as a high priority gap in IUCN's thematic study on desert world heritage. Next slide, please. Many kinds of landforms have developed in the nominated property, the grand mountainous plains and terrace landforms, as well as typical modern glacial landforms, ancient glacial landforms, and redbed canyons. And the nominated property samples a significant proportion of the whole mountain range, including significant glacial fields, and the series is anchored to the west by the highest peak in the Tianshan of Tomur at over 7,400 metres, and to the east by Bogda, 5,444 metres. Next slide, please. Xinjiang Tianshan is an outstanding example of ongoing biological and ecological evolutionary processes in a temperate arid zone. The altitudinal vegetation distributions, significant differences between the different facing slopes, the diversity of flora all illustrate the biological and ecological evolution of the Pamir and Tianshan highlands. And it has outstanding biodiversity with 110 species of rare and endangered plants, 317 of rare and endangered animals, and 118 species of endemic plants and 22 species endemic animals. Next slide, please. All the components, as presented in the nomination file, are protected via a range of national laws and regulations governing protected areas, wildlife, grassland management, and the use of water resources. The boundaries of the components are mostly based on existing protected areas, with the exception of the merging of the Kalajun and Kwerdening component, which was proposed by the State Party during the evaluation and which improves the overall integrity of the nomination. And the boundaries have a clear rationale in terms of capturing key features and really representing the natural features that are the subject of the nomination. Each of the components has a management plan, and also a plan exists for this series as a whole. A new updated plan for the whole property will come into effect in 2014. The property has adequate staff and it's well funded. Special attention needs to be given to ensuring effective management, planning and coordination across all of these components, which are geographically well separated from each other. We also consider future efforts should include considering the opportunities to extend or add to the property, given the very large scale of the Tian Shan mountain range. And importantly, this should also consider the possibility of initiatives with neighbouring countries to consider possible transnational opportunities to extend protection of the Tian Shan system. And we're aware of some parallel efforts to possible World Heritage listing that are underway in that regard. In addition, we recommend that the nomination poses some questions for further reflection in China on the opportunities to include traditional grazing and other use within areas considered for nomination as natural sites. Next slide, please. In summary, IUCN considers that this property meets the relevant natural criteria, the integrity and protection management requirements, and we recommend that the committee inscribe it upon the World Heritage List. And IUCN's draft decision, the draft decision is recommended, is on page 9 of both the English and French versions of Working Document 8B, Chair. In relation to the factual error letter, so that was submitted by the State Party, I would understand from the fact it was not included in the document that's been circulated that the conclusion of the chairperson is that the information is not a factual error, and our assessment of that information is that it was a useful update of progress in the type of protected area status that will be accorded to the Kaladrung Kwedening component of the property. It was a very specific point which I think we would be happy to acknowledge as updated information, and seems to report continued progress in that regard. Thank you, Chair.
I now open the floor to the committee member. Russia, you have the floor.
Спасибо большое. Российская Федерация от всей души поздравляет Китайскую Народную Республику с вписанием в список всемирного наследия такого уникального, потрясающего объекта. И я, конечно, хочу поздравить IUCN и Центр всемирного наследия, поскольку вписание в список – это всегда хорошая совместная работа. И в будущем мы будем надеяться, что вообще в этот список будут входить только те объекты, которые рекомендованы к вписанию. И кроме того, я надеюсь, что эта номинация будет в будущем дополнена Восточным Тянь-Шанем, которую сейчас готовят 3 страны – Узбекистан, Казахстан и Киргизия. Спасибо большое.
Thank you. I give the floor to Malaysia.
Thank you, Chair. Like Russia, Malaysia also would like to congratulate China on this very important nomination, covering 4 components and 2/3 of the Tian Shan mountain range. However, Malaysia hopes that the neighboring countries, such as Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Kyrgyzstan, will take similar steps in protecting the other 1/3 of the Tian Shan mountain range. Thank you, sir.
You have the floor. India, please.
Mr. Chair, India compliments the State Party of China for adding over 100,000 hectares as core and buffer zone to the World Heritage coverage. In the present context of climate change, threats on the planet, this nomination would go a long way in mitigating the threats to mountain ecosystem. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Je donne la parole à l'Algérie.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. L'UICN a parlé d'un bien spectaculaire, de panorama extraordinaire, et nous n'avons pas d'autres mots plus forts pour exprimer notre sentiment sur la valeur et l'intérêt de ce bien que de nous féliciter et féliciter l'État partie pour nous avoir offert ce si beau cadeau. Donc nous appuyons fortement la proposition chinoise d'inscription de ce bien. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Je donne la parole à la France.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. La France voudrait féliciter les autorités chinoises pour cette proposition d'inscription et la grande qualité du dossier qui nous est aujourd'hui soumis. Nous souscrivons donc totalement aux propos tenus par l'IUCN sur ce dossier et nous joignons à ces félicitations.
Merci. Je donne la parole à la Serbie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we would like to congratulate China for a good nomination. And also it's really important that we have a really good site with different habitats and relic species included. And what we believe it's particularly important that we have a qualified management and capacities to carry the management plan and implement it, which will be good for the future work. So congratulations again.
La parola è donnée à l'Éthiopie.
Thank you, Chair. Ethiopia would like to congratulate the State Party of China on this important nomination and for the outstanding joint effort made to bring such an important site to the World Heritage List. Congratulations, China. Thank you.
Kyrgyzstan, you have the floor. No?
Thank you,
committee member first. Committee member first. Japan, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Japan, despite some bilateral problems we have between us, strongly support the inscription with site, which is magnificent and superb. Thank you.
Germany, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, we only can join previous speakers congratulating the State Party on this very well prepared nomination of a wonderful site. We have just seen beautiful pictures of it. We would like to highlight the fact that following the IUCN evaluation mission, the State Party has immediately taken up the suggested boundary modification to enhance the integrity of the site as well as other recommendations. Thank you.
La parole à la Suisse.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. La Suisse voudrait à son tour saluer la très bonne qualité du dossier qui nous a été soumis et souligner également que cette qualité et les efforts qui ont été entrepris pour le constituer nous paraissent de bon augure pour que le dossier, la région, soit bénéficiaire d'une coordination régionale développée. Nous pensons que ce vœu que nous exprimons sera certainement entendu et traité avec le même sérieux et la même qualité que ce qui a présidé à la constitution du dossier. Je vous remercie.
I invite Thailand to take the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The Thai delegation would like to register our high commendation to the State Party China for its great effort which have led to the culmination of the nomination of serial property and 4 components, and the buffer zone, which is so large, it's almost 500,000 hectares, and as evident by the magnificent picture we have seen on the screen. Thank you very much.
I give the floor to Qatar.
شكرا سيدي الرئيس. ونحن كذلك نود أن نهنئ الصين على نوعية هذا الملف المقدم وجمال الموقع الذي رأيناه اليوم، وهو موقع ضخم جدا، ونتمنى كل التوفيق للصين في الحفاظ على هذا الموقع الجميل للأجيال القادمة. وشكرا.
Je donne la parole à Sénégal, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Le Sénégal souhaite aussi se joindre à tous ceux qui l'ont précédé pour féliciter la Chine pour la qualité de ce dossier et constater que c'est devenu vraiment un des pays les mieux représentés sur notre liste. C'est donc un bel exemple et je pense que nous allons de plus en plus essayer de nous inspirer de son efficacité pour essayer d'avancer aussi bien. Nous félicitons la Chine.
Merci Sénégal. Je donne la parole à la délégation du Cambodge.
Thank you, Chair. Cambodia wishes to congratulate China for the high quality of its dossier, nominating this exceptional site of outstanding beauty and significant dimension. Thank you.
I give the floor to United Arab Emirates.
شكرا سيدي الرئيس. والإمارات بدورها أيضا تهنئ الصين على هذا الموقع الرائع والأكثر من رائع، وتنادي دولة الإمارات دول الجوار إلى الانضمام لهذا الموقع لكي تكتمل الجمالية. شكرا سيدي الرئيس.
Je donne la parole à Kyrgyzstan. Kyrgyzstan, you have the floor. Kyrgyzstan, please.
Yeah, thank you once more, Mr. Chairman. I also would like to join all countries congratulating China for preparation and the submission of this nomination, which of Xinjiang Jinshan, which has surely the universal value for all of us, and highlighting the point of Malaysian delegation, I wanted to add that Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, and Uzbekistan, all these three countries have already been working since 2005 on preparation of joint nomination, which is named Western Tinshan, and we will be cooperating with China in future in the joint management of our sites located in Western Tinshan. Thank you very much. Congratulations once more, China.
Je retourne à l'État membre du comité. Je donne la parole à la Mali, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Monsieur le Président, nous saisissons l'opportunité pour féliciter l'État parti de Chine pour la qualité du dossier et féliciter également l'IUCN pour l'évaluation. Et au passage, nous notons avec satisfaction que nous venons d'inscrire ce matin un deuxième type de désert. Donc le désert est de plus en plus représenté sur la liste du patrimoine mondial. Merci.
I give the floor to South Africa.
Thank you, Chair. South Africa wishes to join in congratulating China in this good work it has done. This is an enormous site. It sets a very good example. And China has lived up to the size of its country by making sizable achievements. Thank you.
Give the floor to Kazakhstan.
Thank you very much. Distinguished members of the committee, ladies and gentlemen, since this is the first intervention on behalf of the delegation of Kazakhstan, first of all, let me thank the government of Cambodia for warm hospitality and excellent organization of this session. I would also like to congratulate People's Republic of China with submission of the nomination Xinjiang Tianshan and thank IUCN for the detailed report on this nomination, which underlines the complexity and value of Tianshan mountain system. As you see from the report, dear colleagues, this mountain system encompasses China, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Uzbekistan.
Starting from the year 2005, the above-mentioned property was included in tentative lists by 3 Central Asian states. Since then, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Uzbekistan have been working on joint transboundary nomination, Western Tianshan, which is going to be presented to World Heritage Secretariat later this year. Therefore, World Heritage Center and its advisory bodies were aware that 3 Central Asian states have been already working on the transnational nomination. And we have 2 questions for World Heritage Center Secretariat. First is why World Heritage Secretariat did not recommend Chinese side to consider joining transnational nomination that 3 other states were already working on. And second, why we were not informed that China is working on the nomination of the same property in order to invite our colleagues to join transboundary nomination. However, at this point, of course, in the view of the fact that the nomination Xinjiang Tianshan is already under consideration of the World Heritage Committee, we would like once again to congratulate, first of all, the Chinese side and to point out that our transboundary nomination, Western Tianshan, will be submitted by Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Uzbekistan September this year. We hope that our nomination will be treated as an independent nomination. Thank you for your attention.
See, the Secretariat or IUCN like to take the floor. You like to take the floor? No.
It's not a committee member.
Yes. So, if there are no more comment or no objection, I now declare decision 37. 8B.10 adopted. Let me congratulate China on behalf of the entire committee for the inscription of the property. China, you have the floor for a brief 2-minute statement. Thank you.
Dear Chairman Swan, distinguished representatives, on behalf of People's Government of Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, I would like to start by extending my sincere thanks to all of you who gave us the opportunity to present our scenery heritage to the world. As is the symbol of Xinjiang, Tianshan is equally to spread home of people of diverse ethnicity here. Over the years, the Chinese authorities at various levels have attached great importance to the conservation and the management of Tianshan and achieved satisfactory results through implementation of the number of effective measures. Hundreds of experts and professionals from home and abroad, and massive resources from local communities have been extensively worked throughout of the nomination process. Today, we are greatly inspired by and thankful to the world's recognition of Tianshan for its outstanding universal value and high protection standards, which puts it on the World Natural Heritage List. we pledge our best efforts to safeguard the world legacy for our future generation. We value the committee's suggestion and will reach out to and strengthen cooperation with neighboring natures, World Heritage Center and IUCN to explore the potential for transnational serious heritage. With this, we thank you once again for your consideration and welcome to Xinjiang, welcome to Tianshan. Thank you.
So I express my deep thanks to Dr. Huang Wei, the Vice Governor from China. Now I come to another side, Great Himalayan National Park, India. Draft Decision 37-8B.11. I now invite IUCN to present the nomination of the Great Himalayan National Park, India. But before I give the floor to the Secretariat, Mr. Balsamo, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to remind that we received a factual error letter on the Great Himalayan National Park, which is online with a full version of all the factual errors letters received and is commented also in a document that is online. Thank you.
And please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. IUCN's evaluation of this property is on page 41 of both the English and French versions of the IUCN evaluation report. The Great Himalayan National Park, GHNP, is located in the western part of the Himalayan mountains in India. The 75,400 hectare GHNP was formally declared in 1999 and coincides with the nominated World Heritage Property. Two separate components form the park, separated by the 9,000 hectare Sanj Wildlife Sanctuary. Great Himalayan National Park's nomination recognises a 26,560 hectare buffer zone on its western boundary, which is not part of the nominated property, but is planned and managed in conjunction with the park. Next slide. The park includes the upper mountain glacial and snowmelt water source origins of the western flowing Jiwa Nal, Sanj and Turthan rivers and the northwesterly flowing Parvati River, which are all headwater tributaries ultimately of the Indus River. The property sits within a much larger ecological complex of protected lands of over 117,000 hectares, which form an island of undisturbed environments in the western Himalayan landscape. GHNP protects mountainous landscapes extending over an elevation range from 1,900 metres to over 6,000 metres above sea level. It includes evidence of prior glaciation, and its diversity of environments extend from rocky ice-covered landscapes to alpine grasslands to mixed broadleaf and coniferous forests. The park is undoubtedly an area of natural beauty. However, the nominated property is considered to be scenically typical and representative of many high mountain systems in other parts of the world. GHNP is of significance for the conservation of western Himalayan biodiversity. The park is home to over 1,000 species of plants and also protects some 31 species of mammals, 209 birds, 9 amphibians, 12 reptiles and 125 recorded insect species. The World Conservation Monitoring Centre identifies 6 other World Heritage Sites in the Himalayas and 7 others that are on tentative lists of 5 countries that share this large mountain range. Nanda Devi and the Valley of the Flowers World Heritage Site is considered the closest comparison. Also in the Western Himalayas, several hundred kilometres from GHNP, it is approximately the same size and inscribed under the same criteria as those nominated for this property. The two areas are quite comparable in species richness, with a key difference being that GHNP protects lower altitude valley ecosystems and perhaps has more dominant Palarctic Indo-Malayan realm elements, being in a transition zone. The boundaries of GHNP offer both geographic and legal protection. The IUCN mission was made aware of processes to add the 9,000 hectare Sanj Wildlife Sanctuary and additional lands further to the south, the 6,000 hectare Turthan Wildlife Sanctuary. The addition of both these areas in their entirety would establish a consolidated 90,000 hectare plus GHNP with more complete protection of 4 river valleys and more consolidated protection of western Tragopan and musk deer habitats, as well as the habitats of many other species. A comprehensive management plan for the GHNP conservation area has been prepared for the period 2010 to 2020. The plan identifies appropriate conservation, protection and management measures for the park. It also includes management prescriptions for the wider ecozone and the Sanj and Turthan wildlife sanctuaries. The evaluation mission detected positive support for the nomination from local groups. However, IUCN received representations from some Indigenous groups raising concerns regarding a number of community engagement and rights issues. Similar issues are understood to be associated with the recommended addition of the 2 wildlife sanctuaries to the nominated area. IUCN encourages continued community engagement to broaden this beyond village head level and to foster improved opportunities for co-management of the Greater Himalayan National Park. So in summary, IUCN recommends the committee defer the examination of the nomination of Great Himalayan National Park to the World Heritage List, noting the potential to meet Criterion 10 and the need to address a range of issues, most notably finalising the addition of Sanj and Turthan wildlife sanctuaries. The draft decision is set out on page 11 of both the English and French versions of Working Document 8B, and I would like to just bring to the committee's attention that a number of errors in relation to the Latin names within the evaluation report were acknowledged by IUCN and are included in our letter, which is posted on the UNESCO website. Thank you, Chair.
I open for comment. Je donne la parole à la Suisse.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Cet important bien proposé remplit, on a vu, les besoins pour la protection et la gestion, une gestion de qualité, on a vu, on en remercie encore le pays. Mais sous la forme actuelle, le dossier ne remplit pas les autres piliers de la valeur universelle exceptionnelle, comme on a vu, c'est-à-dire les critères et l'intégrité, donc l'IUV et l'intégrité, surtout à cause du choix du périmètre et d'autres détails à définir. Mais vu le besoin de travaux ultérieurs, il est nécessaire de donner assez de temps à l'État aussi pour nous fournir un dossier amélioré. Donc l'idée que tous ces travaux supplémentaires aussi au niveau du périmètre sont assez longs et il faut donner assez de temps à l'État, comme ça a été discuté dans les derniers jours. Et de différer ce dossier justement est une occasion pour l'État et une très bonne occasion, une très bonne opportunité pour améliorer leur dossier. Et entre-temps, on est sûr que l'État va gérer et protéger ces sites comme il l'a fait jusqu'à maintenant. Merci.
Merci la Suisse. Je donne la parole à l'Éthiopie.
Thank you, Chair. We understand that the state party, India, has conducted an extensive comparative analysis of this nominated property, the Great Himalayan National Park, with other similar properties in the Himalayan region. The World Conservation Monitoring Center has also indicated in its comparative analysis that the property supports a significant proportion of Western Himalayan biodiversity, based on which it can be concluded that the OUVs of this property not matched by other such properties. We would therefore like to know from the advisory body, the IUCN, the scientific basis of its recommendation of asking the state party to further consider undertaking a comparative analysis and for recommending a deferral. As we observe contradiction of analysis with regards to legal protection and management of the property where within the report itself, like page 43 and 47, we note consideration that it meets all the requirements. Thank you.
Maybe IUCN like to answer to the question.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the distinguished delegate from Ethiopia. Sorry. The discussion on values for the property is something of a fine-scale argument, and the IUCN evaluation looked closely at the arguments being put forward in relation to the values of this property in comparison to others. The World Conservation Monitoring Centre analysis did indeed make that note in terms of the values of this property. However, it also drew the conclusion that the Nanda Devi National Park and Valley of the Flowers property was the closest comparison, and the IUCN conclusion is that these values may well be complementary to the values within that property. The question, I think, relates therefore to not so much the argument around the values of this property in terms of the conclusion of the IUCN evaluation, but more to the integrity issues, in particular the fact that this property is in two components with a buffer zone that is just to the western part of the property. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dominated property, the Great Himalayan National Park, forms the central part of the larger landscape that includes several national parks and also wildlife sanctuaries. So, for clarification, we would like to know from the state party its vision how to manage and their plans how to manage such large landscape for the maintaining of biodiversity and also the outstanding universal value of the nominated property. Thank you.
Donna Parola Kata.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. هو نفس السؤال تقريبا، يعني نريد أن نعرف من الدولة الطرف كيف ما هي رؤيتها لإدارة هذا الموقع الكبير في حجمه، يعني وفي مساحته، من أجل الحفاظ على التراث، على الثراء البيولوجي والقيمة الاستثنائية للموقع. شكرا.
I continue with the committee member. Yield the floor to Malaysia.
Thank you, Chair. In addition to those inquiries, Malaysia would like to know if this is right, that the issues with the local committee has already been resolved. Thank you, Chair.
I give the floor to Russia.
Я выступлю несколько позже, поскольку мы подали заявку на изменение резолюции. Спасибо.
I call on Germany.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With regard to this interesting nomination, we would like to recall the figure showing that OUV sits on three pillars: criteria, integrity, as well as protection management. And I join the comments my Swiss colleague made earlier in this discussion. In the nomination in front of us, two pillars of OUV are not fulfilled at this moment: criteria and integrity. For providing justification on criteria, the comparative analysis submitted is not convincing to us, and more detailed work needs to be done. And we believe that can be done with some more efforts put in it. And we share the view by IUCN that the integrity of the boundaries of the nominated property site is not adequate. And this has been very clearly highlighted in the evaluation report. We see a clear necessity of including the Sine and Tirtan wildlife sanctuaries in the property in order to enhance both the value of the Great Himalayan National Park as a potential World Heritage Site, as well as the integrity of the whole property before qualifying for inscription. And therefore, for the moment being, we support the draft decision in front of us.
I call on South Africa.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to get some clarification from IUCN. In its technical evaluation, IUCN considered the nomination of the Great Himalayan National Park as a serial nomination, whereas the state party had not submitted it as a serial nomination. Subsequently, on the basis of its own analysis, IUCN has questioned the serial nature of the nominated property. There is therefore adequate scientific basis to conclude that the nominated property meets criteria 10 of the operational guidelines. We would like to know from IUCN whether the nominated property is a serial property or not. Further, whether the establishment of OUV in the property follows a different process in the case of a serial or single site nomination. South Africa is of the considered view that not enough basis has been demonstrated to justify a deferral. We cannot find any further requirements to be actioned by the state party while the site is deferred. If this was a serial nomination, we would agree with IUCN. But as a single nomination, it indeed meets criteria 10 and should be inscribed. Thank you.
IUCN, you make the comment, please.
Thank you, Chair. In relation to the query from our South African delegates on serial nomination, IUCN notes that the property was officially registered at 36COM as a de facto serial site with two component parts, one of 15 serial nominations identified for evaluation in this cycle. However, the evaluation, I think, made it clear that the state party is not intending to have this property as a serial nomination, and nor does IUCN believe that is an appropriate configuration for the property. Thank you.
Président, la parole à la France.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. La France souscrit pleinement aux remarques qui ont été faites par les délégations de la Suisse et de l'Allemagne. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Estonia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Estonia also sees great potential for this nomination, but we believe that it requires more work. And the option of deferral, as proposed in the draft decision, we think it is justified, and it's a very useful tool for the state party so that it can further refine the nomination. Thank you.
Now no more committee member. Colombia, please.
Gracias, señor presidente. Nosotros queremos sumarnos a las opiniones de Francia, de Bélgica, de Suiza. Sin embargo, quisiéramos que le diera el uso de la palabra al Estado parte. Muchas gracias. Alemania también, perdón.
Most the committee member asking the floor, so I invite the state party to take the floor, please.
Thank you, Chair. And I'd like to thank IUCN, and I'd like to thank the committee members for the incisive analysis, comments, and questions. Let me begin with an unusual tribute to IUCN. The process over the last 6 months has been remarkably inclusive. IUCN has gone out of its way to be open We've had discussions at different points of time on many issues. They've done it post-evaluation. I think this is the first time that I have actually seen this in a World Heritage nomination process, and I think it's a wonderful first step. So I'd really like to sort of commend this across the board for all nominations, for all processes under this. Having said that, let me, and I'm going to hand it to my specialists, the men and women who are actually on the ground in the field. I'm only going to respond to one issue which I think concerns the issue of people, rights, and communities, and stress that India is an inclusive democracy. Everybody has a voice, has a vote. There's a process sanctioned by law. There's a process that is underway. There is a process that is currently underway that for all of these issues to be addressed. In fact, our information is that most of these have been addressed, and compensation of $473,000, if that makes any difference, has actually been awarded to the 369 families that are affected. Insofar as the OUV is concerned, I think IUCN would agree that that is not really an issue. I mean, there is demonstrated OUV, they have said that. On the integrity and the management, pages 43 and 47 confirm that this is indeed the case. I think the issue, the only issue that really remains is of a portion, a small portion of about 15,000 hectares, which IUCN would like to see included, which the state party, which India is in the process of doing. In our system, there is really no difference between a national park and a wildlife sanctuary. For us, the protection status, the management arrangements are exactly the same. But let me, if need be, sort of hand it over to my more professional and field colleagues. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. The distinguished delegate from Serbia and Qatar have asked this query on the vision for the Great Himalayan National Park. We would like to say that the state party has formulated a management plan which is science-based, which is participatory, and comprehensively articulates the vision for this great Himalayan landscape. We have a string of 6 protected areas around the property which work like a garland, and they have a very strong buffering function to maintain the OUVs of the property. In brief, the property has a very comprehensive management system backed up by a strong policy, legal and protective cover, and this is adequate to maintain the OUVs of the property for times to come. On the second issue of the rights regarding the local communities, our distinguished ambassador has made that the nominated property has no local communities inside its boundary. Prior to the gazettement, yes, there were people living inside. They were taking out medicinal plants and using the area for grazing. But by following a due process of law, the state party has extinguished all rights and concessions of the local communities inside the park. And this fact has also been acknowledged in the IUCN report. Chairman, sir, in summary, the rights of the local communities, along with their needs and aspirations, have been duly addressed by the state party. The state party also have a very comprehensive eco-development plan to meet the needs of the local community which live around the protected area. Thank you very much.
Any more comment from the committee member? I see none. So, Rapporteur, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to turn your attention to the draft decision 37-8B11. We have received amendments from Russian Federation, so I am wondering, Mr. Chair, if you are going to give the floor to Russian Federation to explain, or I can read them and then we can discuss as you wish, Mr. Chair.
Please, Rapporteur.
Please, in the first paragraph, there have not been changes, having examined documents, etc. In paragraph number 2, Russian Federation suggested refers instead of deferral, the examination of the nomination of the Great Himalayan National Park, India, back to the state party in order to allow it to. Then little a, there have not been changes. Number B, I will read. Continue to strengthen the engagement of communities in participatory governance in the site, including the Tirthan and Saint wildlife sanctuaries. Number C, there have not been changes. Please, we are going to number D, slowly. Consider undertaking a comparative study. Then we have straight out what was in original proposal. To fully assess the relative values of the nominated property against other sites in the Himalayas and adjacent mountain regions. Then we strike out the rest of the paragraph as proposed by Russian Federation. And little e, there have not been changes proposed for amendments. Thank you, Mr. Chair. You can proceed for the adoption.
Thank you, Rapporteur. So I think here the idea is clear. We change from defer to referral. Yes. Germany, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we pointed out earlier, that we have some concerns about that property owner, that we supported the draft decision as it stood. Regarding the changes, I would like to seek some clarification on the changes which were made to paragraph D by crossing out some parts of the sentence, and maybe I would like to ask the state party who brought in this amendment to explain why these aspects have been crossed out. I would still see them as important parts of the recommendation, so I seek for clarification on this. Thank you.
Delegation of Russia, do you like to take the floor? Russia, you have the floor, please.
Спасибо большое. Я бы хотела начать сначала, что, конечно, говоря о номинации объекта Большой Гималайский национальный парк, который подготовлен Индия, я думаю, что мы должны выразить большую признательность за выдвижение данного уникального объекта. У нас сегодня день начался с самых крупных гор на Земле. Это очень приятно. Национальный парк является по существу жемчужиной, играет большую роль в сохранении выдающейся ценности богатейшей с точки зрения биоразнообразия экосистемы Гималаев. Очевидно, что номинируемый объект в полной мере соответствует критерию 10, то есть включает природные ареалы, наиболее важные и значительные с точки зрения сохранения биологического разнообразия и так далее. На территории парка адекватно соблюдается требование ЮНЕСКО к обеспечению сохранения и целостности данного объекта и действует система управления. Страна, насколько я поняла, и мы очень рады, очень тесно работает с IUCN. Нам показалось важным обратить внимание на то, что в настоящее время Индия завершает процесс окончательной нотификации 725 гектаров данной территории, что позволит соединить две части объекта. И я не сомневаюсь в том, что страна будет готова подать необходимые, так сказать, нотификации, документы в самое ближайшее время. Поэтому мы предложили в целом дать возможность стране в ближайшее время закончить вот окончательную номинацию, то есть перевести из категории deferral в категорию referral, особенно с учетом того, что нам пояснил уважаемый представитель Индии в отношении местных сообществ. Теперь касательно пункта D. Значит, там была рекомендация, чтобы IUCN и работал IUCN, а также организация Международный центр по комплексному развитию гор, значит, совместно с Индийским департаментом, который занимается парками, провел дополнительные исследования. Тем не менее, хочу указать на то, что в сравнительном анализе, который представила Индия, очень четко сказано о том, что они очень тесно сотрудничают с ICIMOD, это вот центр, международный центр по развитию горных территорий, и это позволяет нам предложить пункт D вот в такой, так сказать, в такой формулировке. Спасибо.
Thank you. Germany, to take the floor. Germany, do you like to take the floor? No.
Yeah, just quickly commenting on this. If there is good cooperation already, then I see no problem by leaving that paragraph in there. And with regard to the second half of the sentence, which was crossed out, we would also like to prefer to get that second part back in as well. I have not heard any explanation why to strike it out. Thanks.
Je donne la parole à l'Irak.
شكرا جزيلا سيدي الرئيس. بالرغم من أن هذا الملف من الملفات الصعبة، لكن بالنظر لكبر الموقع وتنوعه، مع ذلك فإن الدولة الطرف بذلت جهودا كبيرة في هذا الترشيح. بنفس الوقت أشارت IUCN إلى أن الموقع محمي قانونيا وبيئيا ويتمتع بإدارة وخطة صيانة متكاملة مع تعهدات الدولة الطرف بحل باقي الإشكالات. على ذلك نؤيد ما اقترحته ممثلة روسيا. شكرا.
I give the floor to Russia.
Я готова пояснить, почему снята вторая часть. Потому что по существу эта работа уже сделана как раз со специалистами вот этого международного центра и частично IUCN. И это очень четко прописано в номинационном досье. Спасибо большое.
The floor to Senegal, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Nous avons essayé de suivre aussi bien les explications de l'IUCN que les informations complémentaires apportées par l'État partie ainsi que d'autres honorables membres du comité. Incontestablement, le site présente beaucoup d'atouts, beaucoup d'intérêts. Et l'Himalaya, ce n'est pas n'importe quoi dans notre mentalité collective à nous tous. Ceci dit, nous pensons que dans l'analyse de l'IUCN, il y a des éléments extrêmement pertinents qu'il ne serait pas souhaitable de ne pas prendre en considération. Notamment, par exemple, au niveau du point E, où je pense qu'il propose un développement modulaire tout à fait original qui pourrait permettre aux biens dans les années à venir d'avoir une configuration beaucoup plus forte et d'être moins segmentée. Mais l'Inde est aussi un très grand pays de patrimoine. Je pense qu'il y a énormément d'expertise. Moi, je voudrais, avant qu'on prenne une décision par rapport à la proposition de la Fédération de Russie, de remettre peut-être une fois de plus la parole à l'État partie. Pas pour lui demander de revenir à nouveau sur les explications, mais simplement pour attirer peut-être son attention sur un fait, c'est-à-dire que le renvoi, c'est comme Fort Boyard. Je ne sais pas si tout le monde connaît Fort Boyard. Et à Fort Boyard, il y a un monsieur qui s'appelle Passepartout. Alors, il a la mauvaise manie de vous fermer la porte derrière et de vous bloquer pour un moment. Est-ce que, avec le renvoi, l'honorable délégation de Chine, de l'Inde, excusez-moi, pense qu'elle pourra anticiper la venue de Fort Boyard pour nous présenter un dossier tout à fait acceptable d'ici 3 ans. Je vous remercie.
Continuer avec le pays membre du comité. Je donne la parole à la Malaisie.
Please.
Thank you, Chair. I haven't heard the argument on both sides. Malaysia feels strongly that many assets has already been fulfilled by the criteria. However, there are only minor, I would say, issues that have been resolved. Malaysia tends to go along with Russia for the amended consideration, but however, I will support Senegal's call to hear another explanation by the state party. Thank you, Chair.
Je donne la parole à la Suisse.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Comme déjà dit par plusieurs de nos collègues, il y a encore beaucoup de travail à faire dans ce dossier. C'est peut-être possible de le référer. Ça va être beaucoup de travail pour l'État partie de faire ça assez très vite. On peut accepter un référé, mais il y aura beaucoup de travail encore à faire. Et surtout, sur ce point D qu'on discute, nous ne comprenons pas non plus, comme notre collègue allemande, pourquoi cette collaboration avec l'IUCN et surtout en groupe régional serait enlevée, vu qu'elle existe déjà, il faut la souligner, et même, on pourrait même s'en féliciter. Et en plus, on a vu ce matin avec les magnifiques inscriptions qu'on a eues ce matin dans la liste que l'approche en série est très importante pour la préservation des valeurs de biodiversité et donc on ne comprend pas non plus pourquoi il faudrait enlever la dernière partie de la phrase qui est une invitation très importante pour la conservation de la biodiversité au niveau de l'Himalaya. Merci beaucoup.
Je donne la parole à l'Algérie.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Moi, je voudrais revenir à la proposition de la Russie sur le renvoi et peut-être demander à l'IUCN d'avoir son point de vue donc, sur cette proposition et si elle a des incidences sur les éléments d'évaluation qui ont été faits jusque-là. Merci.
IUCN, you want to answer?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. To respond to the question from the distinguished delegate, IUCN prefers to retain its recommendation, I think, for the reasons that have been outlined. I think principally that as is in the evaluation, we consider that the property in combination with adjoining areas has potential to meet criterion 10. However, there's further consideration required. As I outlined, the conclusion of both IUCN and WCMC studies was that this property has comparative values to other properties, in particular the Nanda Devi Valley of the Flowers, across a number of areas. So in that regard, I think the evaluation felt that it was somewhat premature, and some of the other recommendations related to the conversion of the 2 wildlife sanctuaries as part of the national park and the rights issues also contributed to that position. However, of course, if the committee chooses to adopt a referral, we would, of course, be happy to work with the state party to address the issues raised. Thank you.
Oui, je donne la parole à la France.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. La France soutient les remarques qui viennent d'être faites par les délégations de l'Allemagne et de la Suisse. Elle voit dans les réflexions qui sont apportées une occasion pour l'État partie de renforcer sa coopération et son dialogue avec l'UICN, comme l'a lui-même souligné l'État partie dans ses propos introductifs. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
I call on South Africa.
Thank you, Chair. The view seems to be common that a number of things have been met and that the state party has the capability to make right. The question is whether it becomes a deferral or a referral. I'd like to support the view of the referral, particularly as the advisory body himself has said, if the referral is chosen, they would be able to work with the state party. On paragraph D, I would like to support Russia in removing, with support of the IUCN and other partners such as ICMOD, purely for the reasons that if you specifically name them, you then do not allow the state party to also seek support from other areas. As you can see, if the site is that complex, the state party may require to seek support from other areas outside the IUCN and the ICIMOD. But also it allows IUCN to be able to evaluate whatever has been decided on independently. Thank you.
You have the floor. Colombia.
Gracias, señor presidente. La propuesta de enmienda presentada por la Federación Rusa. Sin embargo, en el literal D quisiéramos respaldar lo sugerido por Suiza, Alemania y Francia. Gracias.
Qatar, please. You have the floor.
Спасибо большое. Уважаемые коллеги, может, мое пояснение как-то немножко, вот, чтобы мы не разделялись по этому пункту. Я еще раз хочу вас отправить к номинационному досье. Там есть список членов научного совета, который работал над этим досье. Туда входят все эти люди, которые вот пытаемся мы здесь из Международного центра, IUCN, национальные парки Соединенных Штатов, специалисты и так далее, национальные специалисты. То есть все это досье было подготовлено при помощи всех этих специалистов. И их еще раз специально тут именовать и вызывать для того, чтобы они еще раз что-то смотрели, ну, просто, мне кажется, это какой-то, ну, перебор или слишком сильно. Досье уже готово, может быть, не совсем внимательно прочитано. Спасибо.
I call again, please. I call on Qatar.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. على كل حال نحن نؤيد ما ورد على لسان مندوبة روسيا وأن نؤيد الذهاب إلى ريفيرال لهذا الملف، ونشجع طبعا الدولة العضو على العمل على أن يتم تقديم ملف متكامل في العام القادم، ويعني أن تكون هذا تعميق للدراسات التي قدمت. وشكرا.
IUCN, you can have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. It was just to perhaps make a clarification on the language in point D, which is language that IUCN put in its evaluation report, and perhaps if I could just address the 2 points, then I think there's also questions to the state party, but it just might help the committee itself reach a conclusion on the points. So there are two deletions of language proposed, and if I could perhaps make these remarks in the context of the kind comments of the distinguished delegate from India, who acknowledged the amount of dialogue we've been able to engage in since the evaluation was published, which has included a face-to-face meeting which was facilitated by India with the site manager from the Great Himalayan National Park, who came to visit us in Switzerland, and we were able to explore a number of the issues, and I think it's germane to point D. So if I could just reflect on the 2 deletions that are proposed. Firstly, I think in terms of the deletion of language around IUCN and ICIMOD, I think we're in no doubt that there is a strong cooperation between IUCN and India over a long time, and we're quite comfortable that is in place. So perhaps it's understood through the summary record that we are doing that, and but India could obviously confirm. And we did understand from the visit from the site manager that, in fact, at least one senior scientist from ICIMOD, who was, I think, his PhD supervisor, if perhaps not directly in the name of ICIMOD, was engaged. So my, I guess, counsel to the committee is that if we could note the summary record of this discussion, then I think we could understand that there is a strong cooperation and it doesn't need to be constrained to IUCN and ICIMOD. In terms of the second deletion that's proposed, my observation on this is this was an attempt to try to make a helpful suggestion on the basis of the language that is retained, which is to undertake the study. And the last part that is deleted would be a further step beyond considering Great Himalayan National Park to capitalise on such a study to also consider the wider region. I don't wish to sort of fight for the language, but our proposal for language was intended to be something which gave a helpful option for such a study and is a sort of logical extension of doing that analysis for the Great Himalayan National Park. So perhaps for colleagues that are debating this language and defending either side of the argument, those 2 remarks would help to reach a conclusion on point D. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I call on Thailand.
Thank you, Chair. Thailand support the proposal of Russian. And after listening to the State Party of India, we fully support the idea. For Thailand, probably India and so many other countries in the room, Himalaya, the mountain is a holy site. We wish very much to ask all party concerned to try their best to list the Himalaya Park in the heritage site as soon as possible. Thank you.
Call on United Arab Emirates, please.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. كما أشار الزميل الذي سبقني فإن منطقة الهيمالايا هي منطقة فريدة في العالم، ولا أن الملف الذي قدم من قبل الهند كان يعني متكاملا، وإن كان هناك بعض الثغرات، وأعتقد أن دولة الطرف قد أبدت استعدادها لسد هذه الثغرات. لذا فنحن في دولة الإمارات نتوجه إلى دعم المقترح الروسي والزملاء في قطر أيضا الذين ذهبوا إلى ضرورة اتخاذ القرار المنصف في هذا الملف. وشكرا.
Again, I call on Germany, please.
Thank you. Having heard the explanation and clarification from IUCN, which I'm thankful for, I could agree that we skip that paragraph on IUCN and ICMOD. I understand that good cooperation is going on, and I believe that both IUCN and the States Party of India will continue that fruitful dialogue. As for the second part, I repeat what I have said before. I feel it important to be kept in, and this has been reaffirmed by IUCN's comment made just a few minutes earlier. Thanks.
I give the floor to India again, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think IUCN has actually covered it. ICMOD is this intergovernmental organization based in Kathmandu. Apart from the fact that the ICMOD representative was the PhD supervisor, he is also the faculty of the gentleman on my left, who's the head of the Wildlife Institute of India. That information, that reporting has already been done. If you want us to do it again, we'll do it with the same people, with the same purpose, and get the same result. The second part of it is, all right, you want to do a comparative analysis. Let me just give some minor observations. The Himalayas are actually a huge mountain chain. The Eastern Himalayas have very little to do with the Western Himalayas. The Eastern Himalayas have more to do with the Indo-Tibetan Malayan amalgam of flora and fauna. The Western Himalayas have probably much more to do with the Karakoram and beyond. So these are two separate things. When you're looking at the Himalayas, of course you could look at Nanda Devi. You already have. We would be happy to do it. The Wildlife Institute, the gentleman on my left, would be happy to be funded by the Government of India to do it all over again. It's not necessary, but we'll do it. This first part of it, as IUCN has pointed out, is not really necessary because ICMOD has also done it. This is not a substantive point. This is not a major issue. We can do these studies, and you'll be happy to know that I have just received clearance for the Wildlife Institute on my left to be declared a Category 2 Center of UNESCO to cater to the entire region. So we'll be happy to do it for the entire region as well. So I don't think we should spend too much time on this. I'm happy to spend more time. I'm always happy for India to be discussed, but it's really not substantive enough. Thank you, Chair.
No more comments, so please, Rapporteur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. After this discussion, I see that there is a near consensus about paragraph D, and I think we can all agree that the first part of the paragraph D that was proposed by deletion from Russian Federation, we can delete. And about the second part, I see that India is actually against doing it again, the report, but maybe we can add at the end. I would suggest in French, please. Can you write it down? Envisager. So we would delete until the region, dans cette région, until the comma, and then please write in French. Et envisager d'éventuelles propositions d'inscription ou d'extinction en série. Voilà. Je ne sais pas si ça vous paraît pertinent ou pas, donc exprimez-vous. Parce que l'Inde a dit que, bon, ils pensent qu'ils ont déjà fait le travail qui a été demandé. Merci.
The revised text is presented on the screen, so if we can proceed to the adoption. Rasea, please.
Уважаемые коллеги, я что-то эту добавку не понимаю, потому что почему potential serial nomination? extension, мы как раз говорили о том, что Индия подавала не как серийную номинацию, а как единую номинацию. Им нужно просто добавить пространство между двумя парками, включить их в эту номинацию. Собственно, вот суть вопроса. А что же мы потенциальную серийную номинацию, extension, это совсем меняет, мне кажется, вообще то, о чем мы говорили. Спасибо.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Après l'intervention de notre collègue indien, on a bien compris que vu qu'ils sont de catégorie d'eau, ils sont très ouverts à une discussion régionale, donc ça va être fait. Et je pense que le mot d'envisager une nomination en série n'est pas fort, donc on n'oblige personne, en plus surtout qu'on commence avec considérer considérer l'idée, cette décision, elle est vraiment pas très forte et il faut que pour être consistant avec la vision d'une protection de la biodiversité sur une chaîne montagneuse comme l'Himalaya, personne ne pourra dire le contraire, j'imagine, il faut envisager au moins cette idée. Et je ne veux pas d'opposition de l'État non plus, après ce qu'il a dit, donc je pense qu'il faut garder cette bonne proposition du rapporteur.
You the floor to Thailand, please.
Just a minor change, Your Excellency, the name Thailand in the second part of D should be with Russian Federation, Iraq, Malaysia, UAE.
Again, please.
I'm sorry, it was not well translated into English. The original in French it was eventual, eventual, and envisage, which is not anymore binding. I'm sorry, I was drafting in French. Now we noticed that it was in English. It was much stronger, but I don't know. It's up to the committee to decide. Thank you. This was our proposal. You can change it.
Ask the committee if they now agree to this change.
If the committee can agree to the new change. Russia, please, you have the floor.
Уважаемые коллеги, в английском тексте просто отсутствует слово proposal, potential proposal of serial nomination extension по сравнению с французским вариантом. Proposition d'inscription d'extension. А в английском нету слова proposals. Potential proposals for serial nomination extension. Ну, в таком виде, как потенциально рассмотреть возможность, ну, вполне можно, наверное, согласиться. No, not proposed. Proposals. Of serial nominations extensions или for no. The eventual proposals for serial nominations extensions.
Now no more.
Malaysia.
Malaysia, please.
Thank you, Chair. Instead of eventual, could we change it to possible proposal?
Germany, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse my intervention again. I didn't want to make a big problem here with this last sentence. I think the last paragraph, number E, is talking on potential serial extensions. I think what was the aim of this last paragraph here is the full sentence, which read, with a view to assessing potential World Heritage candidate areas and boundary configurations in the regions, including potential whatever serial. The whole sentence that is a context. It was not on suggesting specific serial nominations in this sentence, so because this is dealt with in the next paragraph. So I think either we keep the whole sentence or we completely skip it, but I prefer keeping the whole sentence because it's the context which counts here.
Again, please.
Уважаемые коллеги, я предлагаю все-таки дать слово Индии, которая будет заниматься этими вопросами. Пускай она нам пояснит вот по поводу всех этих дальнейших возможных номинаций. Спасибо.
Have the floor, please.
Thank you, Chair. There are two sets of people looking very confused in the room. One is IUCN and one is the Indian delegation. The whole idea actually which IUCN has put forward is to combine the wildlife sanctuaries, national parks, so that you have a common management area administrative unit. It is not IUCN's proposal, and I don't think it ever was, to have a whole bunch of serial nominations if you actually get them into one. So this part of it is you can have one or the other. You can either try and bring them together, or you can have a set of serial nominations. So what we're trying to do, and that's the agreement, is to weld them into one common unit. So by going into serial nominations, you're actually creating another distraction. I'm happy to be distracted, but I think we should move on. Thank you, Chair.
I would suggest if all the delegations agree to strike it off then, and we adopt decision as proposed. So I see if nobody opposes, then I would ask Mr. Chair to propose the adoption of this decision. Thank you very much.
So, no more opposition. I can proceed to the adoption. I now declare the decision 37.8b.11 as revised adopted. I think maybe we cannot have enough time for the next site. So I'd like to adjourn this morning session. The Secretariat have information to announce, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I have a number of announcements to make. The two working groups continue to work, which is the Operational Guidelines Group at 12:30 in the Bureau Room and the Budget Group at 1:30. Then you have the meeting on the second cycle of the periodic reporting exercise in Europe and North America, and this takes place at 1:15 on the fourth floor in room 2 in the Peace Palace. Then Mr. Rao has the pleasure to invite you to the Congo Nature Treasures of the East. It's a film of 26 minutes in the presence of the réalisateur, which takes place from now to 1:45 in the room Romdol on the first floor. Then the IUCN ICROM side event from 1 to 2 o'clock at the advisory body's place on the fourth floor, room 4. It's an African regional event. Thank you very much.
Decreases the viewer with its boundaries, embreeds him into the laws of his stone, suits him, defining his sense